Hello and welcome to the Fantasy Life Show. I'm your host, Ian Hartitz. It is a great day to be great. It's a great day to attempt to build the perfect fantasy football draft with our favorite values in rounds 1 through 16. Talk about a freaking great time, everybody. So hope you've been enjoying the summer, but yeah, get those minds right. Fantasy football draft season is in the air. Accordingly, I do need one of the brightest minds in the industry to help me accomplish all of this. That's right. It's Jake Trowbridge. What's going on, Jake?
Broadway. It never ends with these nicknames, Ian. I'm so thrilled. That's what I live for, is getting on these shows and seeing what you've come up with. I'm doing fantastic over here, chasing that perfection dragon. And I don't know if I've caught it yet, but I think we can maybe get there by the end of the show. We'll see.
Hey, we'll certainly, try or come in last place trying, if you will. Just kidding. No last place punishments for us here on the Fantasy Life Show. But yeah, Jake, again, training camp fever in the air. We do have some notes that we want to talk about there. So hopefully your favorite targets haven't gotten injured just yet. Long string of nicks and bruises, unfortunately, already gracing our glorious pastime known as fantasy football. So we'll get into some of that right now. It is time for our DraftKings opening lines. Unfortunately, Ravens tight end 2 Isaiah Likely has a, quote, small fracture in his foot that is expected to sideline him for 6 to 8 weeks. Sounds like week 1 is still possible, but Jake, could be a situation where we see Mark Andrews not having to worry about one of the more overqualified tight end 2s in really the entire NFL. Really bad timing. I personally am a huge fan of the People's Insider, Ricky. You can follow him over on the old Twitter sphere at Ricky Scoops. A nice insider. I don't know who he is, but he actually goes out on a limb and says things before they happen, unlike a lot of these insiders that are basically glorified dog aggregators in the world. But anyway, he actually reported a couple of days ago that the Ravens were closing in on a new deal with Isaiah Likely, expected to exceed Jake Ferguson's contract. So, Jake, again, it seems like Isaiah Likely is firmly in the Ravens' long-term plans, certainly in their 2025 plans too, as long as he's healthy enough to get out there.
Yeah, that's a big if, and this close to, I say this close to the start of season. We've got weeks. It's just because the Hall of Fame game is nigh that I feel like the timeline has really gotten condensed. It hasn't that much. I'm a little nervous for him, though, because I was already worried. You and I think, both have some appreciation for Rashad Bateman out there as well. I also like Zay Flowers. I also like Mark Andrews. I was wondering how much of the pie that Likely would get, and I don't think that this is helping that case necessarily.
Obviously can't score fantasy points if you're not on the football field, but assuming likely is out there, we do have a fairly even projection split between the two. You can find all of our projections on fantasylife.com. If you want a tier 1 or tier 2 subscription, even feel free to use the code Ian for 20% off. How about them apples? But yes, Jake, again, Mark Andrews currently projected for 73.5 targets. That's the 18th highest mark among tight ends. Isaiah likely just 58.5. That's 31st. So again, a situation where if you take away either, the other one is certainly going to zoom up into the tight end 1 ranks. Mark Andrews still there as it is, but certainly would be a lot higher if likely is going to be out of the picture. So one small note I will say, started to see the Ravens actually using Mark Andrews as their tush-push quarterback later in the season. Didn't actually score any touchdowns. They were mostly just using it on 4th and 1s in the middle of the field, but maybe, just maybe, another factor for him to rack up fantasy points. Playoff demons and drops be damned over there. So, get better soon, Isaiah likely. We'll certainly hear more about this situation as the summer goes on. Another situation, Jake, that again has been out there in the newsways. We've been kind of gathering information on it throughout the last few weeks, but Quinshon Judkins actually got a small update from Browns owner Jimmy Haslam. Noted, first of all, not great news, has not spoken to Quinshon Judkins this month, and also said he is, quote, cautiously optimistic that Judkins will not play football this year, Jake, not be suspended or anything. Cautiously optimistic that Judkins will still be signed to the Browns. I feel like that's a part everyone is missing. This man is not Browns running back Quinshon Judkins. He's actually just running back Quinshon Judkins. He has not signed his contract yet. I would imagine if this would have happened before the draft, he'd be in a similar position as Isaiah Bond. So again, we do not know what happened. We do not know how the legal process is going to play out. But Jake, for me, I nosedive Quinshon Judkins in the rankings. You can find those at fantasylife.com because he is not signed. A 6+ game suspension is firmly on the table. So is this getting very messy, and the Browns not wanting to exactly dive down another PR nightmare a la Deshaun Watson by signing this dude. So thoughts on the Judkins situation that, again, just really doesn't seem to be going anywhere positive anytime soon.
Yeah, Ian, I'm going to need a little bit more than cautious optimism from the guy in charge of the Browns before I decide to dip my toes in the Quinshon Judkins water, especially for a redraft. And I'll be honest with you, this has even knocked him down my dynasty rankings by quite a bit. I updated my my one-man mock draft for dynasty last week, and with this news, even that is a long-term liability for him. So it does open the waves for either Jerome Ford, maybe even some Dylan Sampson to get in there and see what they can do. I'm probably going to avoid most of this backfield unless, if Dylan Sampson's sitting there in round 15 or 16 or something like that, then I'll take a shot, but it's scary.
And again, it's not like we're talking about the RB1 for the Chiefs or the Chargers. I mean, this is an offense that I think a lot of us expect to be among the league's very worst, with a coach that has historically used multiple backs. And again, he's not signed, Jake. So I actually went to old Twitter sphere to ask the people, who do you think out of the top 100 players going in fantasy drafts right now has the most likely chance of not playing a single snap? Over 3,000, nearly 4,000 votes. Appreciate the turnout there. And Quinshon Judkins at 53%, easily number one. Joe Mixon at 19% right down there. Brandon Ayuk and Chris Godwin closing things out. So I will note one-eyed Najee, he was not in the top 100 ADP right now, so he did not get included. But seriously, Jake, even if I open up the top 200 picks, like Keenan Allen would probably be the only guy in here. This is not good.
It's terrible. How are we as fantasy managers supposed to look at this and again feel any semblance of comfort clicking that draft button? We've had hard lines in the sand with some of these players who have gotten suspended to start the season. I think of DeAndre Hopkins even a few seasons ago. And that was when Hopkins was in his prime and he got 4 games. And even then, I didn't want to click draft because I didn't want him sitting on my bench for 4 weeks when I could have had somebody else out there getting fantasy points. So, yeah, he's such an unknown, and this just makes it a double unknown for him.
And again, usually it's a situation where the player is on a team and the team says, we're going to wait for the NFL to decide. And the NFL says, we're going to wait for the legal system to decide. And then the legal system says, we got stuff to do for 2 years and then we'll figure it out eventually down the road. Again, he's not on a team right now. So look, I am old enough, or I guess I should say I went through school back in the day, Jake. And I remember in 5th grade, shout out Mrs. Snoke, I learned about the 6th Amendment, the right to a speedy trial. Maybe it does come out. He gets through the legal process quickly and everything turns out fine. But for right now, man, I am more than happy happy to let someone else take Quinshon Judkins pretty much, man, in fantasy drafts of all shapes and sizes. So again, we'll continue to update you guys on this right now. But currently, for unsigned Quinshon Judkins, things are certainly not looking good. This has been your DraftKings opening lines. Baseball fans, summer is in full swing and the season is heating up. From mid-season rivalries to breakout performances, every game is packed with drama, and there is no better time to jump in with my partners at DraftKings Sportsbook. Right now, new customers who bet just $5 will get $150 in bonus bets instantly. Whether it's towering home runs or clutch strikeouts, you won't want to miss a moment. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and sign up using my promo code FANTASYLIFE. The crown is yours, and you can stay in on the action and use those $150 in bonus bets on DraftKings same game parlays for a shot at an even bigger payout. Combine multiple bets together from the same game, and if you love the thrill of live betting, well, guess what? DraftKings has got you covered. Bet live on in-progress games right as they happen, making watching the game that much more exciting. If sports betting is not yet available in your state, don't worry, you can still join in on all fun with DraftKings Pick 6 and have the shot to win cash prizes. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. New customers use my promo code FANTASYLIFE and bet just $5 on any wager to get $150 in bonus bets instantly. That's promo code FANTASYLIFE only at DraftKings Sportsbook. All right, guys, main topic of the show. Jake and I are going rounds 1 through 16 using the consensus ADP from ESPN, Yahoo, Sleeper, and Real Time Sports. Typical traditional redraft formats, and trying to give you guys our favorite pick in each round. Jake, not going to be as easy as taking our top-ranked player there. We are trying to think about positional scarcity, value, all those things that go into making any given draft pick. So start us off, Jake Broadway Trowbridge, with your round 1 favorite pick.
You know, there's a part of me that was so tempted to make this the easiest thing I've ever done in my life and just say, give me Jamar Chase and let's call it a day and move on to round 2. I did not do that. I wanted to dive a little bit deeper. So I went with CeeDee Lamb. And CeeDee Lamb, I think the hesitation right now, a guy who's going in the middle of the first round by consensus, is that George Pickens is now there. He should eat into some of his target share. And maybe he's not worth a first round pick. I disagree. I think he's very much worth the first round pick. I will go so far as to say that he should be firmly wide receiver 3, maybe even wide receiver 2 for me, honestly. I'll sort that out closer we get to the season. But Lamb has had the second most catches of any receiver through the first 5 years of his career. That's not an accident. And it's not just because Dallas has had nobody else to throw to. I mean, that's a little bit a part of it. But it's also the fact that CeeDee Lamb makes a lot of hay with every opportunity that he gets. Yak master for sure. I think Pickens lining up outside should even help his efficiency some. Now, the question maybe for some people is it's a brand new coaching scheme here. We've got Brian Schottenheimer taking the lead as head coach, and that scares some people because he's kind of unfairly, in my opinion, been labeled as a conservative play caller from his days back in Seattle. This was the whole let Russ cook meme takeover that happened because he wasn't throwing enough. But if we look at his last year with Seattle, 2020, Schottenheimer had them throwing at the 14th highest rate in the NFL. But more importantly, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, these guys had career best fantasy performances, Ian. They both finished as top 10 receivers. So Dak Prescott, he's good enough. He's strong enough. He can support 2 top 10 receivers. I'm not going so bold as to say Pickens will absolutely do that, but you certainly shouldn't be discounting CeeDee Lamb because of it.
We did get an interesting quote from Brian Schottenheimer today talking about how to beat elite defensive lines. Quote, pound the frickin' football, man. Just, try to shove it up their ASS, if you will. So again, Schotty's someone who's talked about his love for running the football in the past. And of course, any coach is going to do that. It is a physical game. You want to have the identity and be a physical football team after all. But yeah, man, Pete Carroll, Rex Ryan, like this dude has been the OC under these physical run-first defensive-minded coaches. Wouldn't immediately assume that those run splits from, again, 5, 10, 15 years ago even are going to be showing up in Dallas because look at that running back room, Jake. And meanwhile, you got Dak, CeeDee, and Pickens. To your point, really does seem like a situation where they are going to be airing out the football. So look, Jamar Chase, wide receiver 1, we all get that. But hey, not even Jamar Chase has averaged as many PPR points per game as CeeDee Lamb over these past 2 seasons. So Cowboys, man, I'm on the record. I think the Cowboys and Falcons could be similar, like the NFC versions of the Bengals, given their pass-happy offenses potentially and their, rather lackluster defenses, if you will. Jake, I think the top 6 is clear-cut in drafts. You have your top 3 running backs and your top 3 wide receivers. I will say, man, given Justin Jefferson's hamstring injury, which, no, I'm not nosediving him down the ranks about, but let's face it, not ideal. It would be a lot cooler if we didn't have an active hamstring issue. If you were able to pick any slot in a draft, would it be somewhere in that top 5?
I think it might be comfortably at the 6th spot because of exactly this. I think that the 6 top guys, you can't, I shouldn't say you can't go wrong with, but it feels like you can't really go wrong with them at this point. I know people towards the end of the round, 11, 12, there's the chance to get CMC at the end of there. I'm off of that train for right now. So if there's a chance I can get CeeDee Lamb at 6, that's where I'd like to be. Avoid those positional runs too, right? You don't got to worry about being at a turn and then, oh man, it's 22 picks before I get my running back or tight end or whatever. So I like the 6th spot. 5 would be just fine with me though.
Round 2, I wanted to go with Nico Collins. He's one of my most drafted players of the offseason, but I just cannot turn down Dolphins rising 3rd-year running back De'Von Achane. Just on the surface, all right, Jake, we have a 23-year-old running back who has ripped off back-to-back top 6 finishes in entirely different ways. We had extreme efficiency in year 1. Meanwhile, Raheem Mostert was scoring 20-plus touchdowns. Didn't matter. In year 2, we had an early season high ankle sprain. Tua Tagovailoa being out of the picture. Didn't quite see the same guy early in the year when it came to his yards per carry average, but really did start to look more like himself down the stretch. And what did we get instead? Ridiculous receiving upside, okay? It was a situation where no running back scored more fantasy points through the passing game than De'Von Achane. There's been no meaningful additions. I mean, we talk about Ollie Gordon or Alexander Madison potentially being a threat to Jalen Wright. I'd be hard-pressed to find a single De'Von Achane hater who actually thinks that those guys should take any of his reps, though. Like, what are we missing here, Jake? De'Von Achane round 2 every freaking time, man.
I've done it. I've done it in our own mock drafts that we've had at Fantasy Life, and it feels real good. I'm not going to lie. I think maybe the concern is just it's the Dolphins offense, and we don't know what's going on with Tua and the concussions. And if Tua goes down, then what? Well, then maybe you get De'Von Achane from last season. What's the problem with that? I don't see real downside here. It's heartening for me to hear you say, by the way, that you're so in on Achane because I know you like Jalen Wright too. But to your point, I don't think Jalen Wright is going to come in and dominate touches at any point in the season, at least not over Achane. And heck, this offense has shown in the past that it can even support 2 top-ish running backs. So I have no bones with this at all.
Which Dolphins running back should you draft this year? Yes, I think that is the answer there. So he's my 9th ranked overall player. Again, going in round 2 in far more fantasy sites than not. De'Von Achane, someone I am happy to scoop up at that price. Dolphins too, man. I mentioned the Cowboys and Falcons. Unfortunately for the Dolphins, man, their top 3 cornerbacks from last year all now out of the picture. Could be another situation where that defense just is not nearly good enough to stop their offense from getting all kinds of shootout-friendly game scripts. So De'Von Achane and, of course, CeeDee Lamb leading things off. Jake, who are you taking in round 3?
Round 3 is reserved for somebody who I had to double check, Ian, last year's ADP because I thought maybe I'm going crazy here. But Garrett Wilson this time last season was going towards the back of the 1st round, beginning of the 2nd round. Now he's sitting here waiting for me in round 3. And I am just the gif of John Travolta in Pulp Fiction, just looking around. Who else is Justin Fields going to be throwing to here? And I can't come up with a real good answer. So Garrett Wilson seems like the dominant number 1 target. You know, Josh Reynolds, Malachi Corley. If that's your flavor, you go ahead and grab them in the later rounds, but I'll be taking Garrett Wilson here. I also have to point out that Justin Fields, no, he's not Aaron Rodgers. Whatever. I'm fine with it because the only time Fields had a true wide receiver 1 for a full season was back in 2023. And at that time, DJ Moore saw 136 targets, more than 1,300 yards, and 8 TDs, and posted a career best wide receiver 9 finish in points per game. So as far as I'm concerned, there's still room for Wilson to outperform what he did last year. There's obviously no Devontae Adams sitting there. I like it.
150 plus target upside in an offense, unironically starting Alan Lazard and actually Josh Reynolds in the year 2025, Jake. I cannot believe it. I mean, look, we've seen Garrett Wilson clear 1,000 yards each of these first 3 seasons. No, he hasn't quite returned that wide receiver one upside, but, Jets now have 130 million reasons to feed him the football as much as possible. So again, any wide receiver, we're trying to get a youthful, non-injured player. Hopefully, we're trying to get a very talented guy. We're trying to get someone with a bunch of volume and ideally someone with a great quarterback. I understand that last checkbox is the one major issue here for Mr. Garrett Wilson. But again, 3 or 4 isn't bad. I mean, we do have a guy, again, in such a barren offense with so much potential target volume to make up for some inefficiency, man. That is a bet I am also willing to take. So Garrett Wilson in round 3. Moving on to round 4. This was tough, man. I mean, honestly, if I had to pick just rank, I guess, pick multiple players per round if I wanted. Like my top 10 favorite draft picks, I would have round 4 George Kittle and round 4 Jalen Hurts in the same thing. So if you guys want to go with Hurts instead of Kittle, that's fine. For the sake of this exercise, though, I will be going with George Kittle. Kenneth Walker and O'Marion Hampton in round 4 too, Jake. Can I just trade back and scoop up as many round 4 picks as possible? Maybe a good reason to try out an auction format this year where those sort of possibilities are firmly on the table. But anyway, with George Kittle, man, I just think we're looking at the best tight end on the planet. All of a sudden, looking at the most target volume of his career potentially. And I just keep going back to how hyped we would all be to be starting and playing George Kittle in any regular season week that didn't include Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk. And now that might be the entire freaking season. So not expecting Ayuk to miss 17 games or anything like that. But man, pupless with a ramp up certainly seems to be on the table, leaving George Kittle to be likely the lead target getter in this ever explosive Kyle Shanahan offense. George Kittle, Jake, sign me up each and every time in round 4.
Every single time. I definitely shared the enthusiasm for George Kittle. And I've talked a lot about how the importance of getting off to a fast start in redraft is so important to me when I'm looking at drafting these guys. And yeah, maybe Ayuk does not miss the whole season, but if he misses even 5, 6, 7 games, whatever, I expect nothing less than top 3 finishes from George Kittle in pretty much every game that I slot him in there. There's just no wrong answer when you look around. I think a theme emerging in this mock draft of ours here is that we're looking at people who seem to be the clear or very close to the clear number 1 target in their own offenses, and that's definitely Kittle.
Trey McBride, Brock Bowers, don't blame anyone for having them ranked higher than George Kittle, but man, they are firmly in the same tier, and seeing George Kittle get, again, a multiple round discount, especially off of Bowers, sign me up for that 8 days of the week. So first 4 rounds down, we're ready to head into rounds 5 through 8. First, though, a quick word to our friends over at Premier National Sports. Guys, if you're an avid college football fan like me, you know that the NIL landscape is actively changing seemingly each and every day. But hey, if you're a high school athlete trying to get into college football, you better be keeping aware of that because there is money to be had. So why not check out the fine folks over at Premier National Sports? They are helping high school athletes looking to take their game to the next level, help you through the entire recruiting process. Premier National Sports is a trusted recruiting and NIL resource for high school athletes and their families. And again, whether it's you, whether it's a friend, whether it's a family member, whether it's just that baller that lives down the street, let them know that Premier National Sports is here to help them with personalized recruiting strategies and NIL education. Check them out if you haven't yet. You can get in touch with their team at premiernationalsports.com. Round 5, Jake, we've talked about George Kittle, CeeDee Lamb, Garrett Wilson, De'Von Achane so far. You have another wide receiver for us. Talk to me about your favorite pick in round 5.
I just can't stop with these wide receivers yet, Ian. And this man just got paid a lot of money, and I love to see players get paid. Courtland Sutton got $92 million, and he's about to turn 30 this season. But that does not scare me, that part at least. Doesn't scare me off of him in redraft at all. Fantasy managers, I think, have been disrespecting Sutton for years now, frankly. He might be this generation's Tyler Lockett with how far he's dipped down in ADP lately. I do miss the 8th, 9th round value that we used to have on Sutton. That's no longer here. But in the 5th round, I'm still comfy. If he jumps up beyond the 5th round, that's where I'll start to get nervous a little bit.
It's one of these situations, Jake, where I admit. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, you go ahead, by all means.
It's one of these situations where I've done a lot of these drafts this year already. I haven't taken Sutton too many times. Once I saw you had him in round 5, I was kind of surprised, man. I'll be honest with you. But when you do start looking at, let's face it, the sample sizes that lead us to a lot of these guys during the offseason, Sutton's as good as anyone, man. We had that infamous week 7 goose egg where he did not get a single target from Bo Nix. After the game, I guess Nix actually went up to Sutton and said, hey, man, if this is ever happening again, grab me. Tell me that you haven't gotten targeted because that is unacceptable. After that, Jake, which again, I think is a reasonable enough just sample size that we're working with and kind of arbitrary cutoff. I mean, week 8 on 18.2 PPR points per game for Cortland Sutton. That was good for wide receiver 10 status in the NFL. I mean, it's a young ascending quarterback. It's a clear-cut number 1 wide receiver in his offense. The man scored the 6th most receiving touchdowns at the position over the past 2 years. Maybe Cortland Sutton is just really freaking good.
He's just really good. And I understand, though, because you look at round 5, and there were some other names that I was interested in round 5. It's not like he takes the cake very easily, but because I like to start off my drafts with wide receivers early on and then kind of fade the running backs a little bit, I'm not a crazy 0 RB truther kind of guy, but I do like to wait a little bit. And outside of like Kittle early in the rounds, I also like to wait at tight end if I don't get him. But I'm a fan of Pat Bryant, the rookie that just joined this team. All right, I've made no bones about that. And do I think he'll get some love from Bo Nix this year? Yeah, but he's not going to cut into the workload of Cortland Sutton. He's the clear-cut number 1 wide receiver on this team. And I think the offense in general will hum along a little bit more. You talked about that kind of week 7, week 8 dividing line with Nix and Sutton, but the entire offense seemed to operate a little bit better after that as well. Ian, I know you like Evan Ingram. I don't dislike Evan Ingram. Don't get me wrong. But I'm also not worried about him vulturing too much from Cortland Sutton. So especially in the touchdown department, which hopefully it's not a sticky stat, but hopefully that can keep up as well.
Again, round 5 price tag, you're going to see him going inside the top 30 wide receivers. But I just think there's a real chance that we wake up after week 1 and we see 9 or 10 targets for Sutton, another 60, 70 yards and a touchdown. And it's like, oh, yeah, that's pretty much what he's been doing the last 2 years. Now he has more investment than ever. Don't be surprised if more good times will continue to roll for Mr. Cortland Sutton. Moving on to round 6, I do have another wide receiver I want to talk about. And it is another Cowboys wide receiver. In fact, that's right, Mr. George Pickens. I am buying the hype here, Jake. I just think that when you look at it, man, he's made the most out of his opportunities throughout his short career. 16.2 yards per catch, 9.7 yards per target. Those are top 11 marks among over 100 qualified wide receivers. And these were in offenses that, let's face it, weren't exactly giving him league best QB player, anything close to that. Now getting teamed up with Dak Prescott. And yes, CeeDee Lamb, where maybe the target ceiling is going to be a little bit lower than past years, but I think we could see even more efficiency and even better touchdown scoring upside in this offense. So we have seen an average over the past 10 years, 5 different teams per year have actually enabled multiple top 24 wide receivers. I think the Bengals are certainly more than in play for that. We could see the Rams, Lions, maybe the Jaguars and Vikings, depending on how Hunter and Addison do. But if I did have to pick 5 teams, Jake, I would firmly have the Cowboys in there. CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens, similar to Dolphins running backs. I'm fine with both.
Yeah, grab them both because you mentioned it during the CeeDee Lamb portion of this, but it bears repeating. What is this backfield? What are we getting out of Javonte Williams and Miles Sanders and Jaden Blue? Schottenheimer can talk about how he wants to run the ball, and that's cool, man. But at a certain point, you have to look at the clientele on your offense and say, maybe it's good that I lean into this passing attack more. You know, with Dak Prescott, who's proven, again, more than capable of doing this. And I do think that George Pickens has a decent shot to finish inside the top 20. Could he get even into the top 15? I think he could. I'm not betting on it, but I think he could.
We have our ADPs at various sites up right now. Shout out to the YouTube and TV listeners of the Fantasy Life Show. And a really good sign, guys, that someone might be of value is when they're being pushed up on more high stakes, just again, money sites right now. And as you can see, he is going right now inside the top 4 rounds over Underdog Fantasy. Meanwhile, we have him going pick 75 over on Yahoo and ESPN. So I would expect those numbers to be climbing up as we get closer to week 1. But man, in the meantime, do not be afraid to take Mr. George Pickens in round 6. Moving on to round 7, Jake, I'm starting to sense a theme here with some of your picks, and I like it because guess what? You need the football to be thrown to you in order to score fantasy points in the first place. Sure seems like this guy will have plenty of those opportunities. Just please, for the love of God, maybe give us some decent quarterback play.
Decent quarterback play, sustained health. That's really all that's needed, in my view, for Chris Olave to pay off as a 7th-round pick. Frankly, again, if we look at ADP over the years, this is much lower than we're used to seeing for Chris Olave. And I get it. Look, concussions are no joke. He's had a lot of them. It is very unfortunate. And in Dynasty, I'm staying away from him for that reason, because there could come a time fairly soon where he decides even to walk away from football for that reason. I wouldn't blame him one bit. This year, he's all in. So I'm going to be all in on Olave, because the only target competition really is going to be Rashid Shaheed. And I know it's not good to get excited about Tyler Shuck, who's, I think, was a quarterback in college through like 8 Taylor Swift eras or something. It's kind of wild how old he is. But I got to point out, Dwayne McFarland did a great write-out about some late breakout candidates at wide receiver. Olave was one of those dudes. And the too long didn't read version is the dude gets open, he gets targets, and he gets massive air yards. And in 2023, when he was healthy, he ranked 9th in air yard percentage, and he had a 25% targets per route run rate. And that was just outside the top 12 receivers. So there's the argument to be made that you're just drafting Garrett Wilson again 4 rounds later. And I'm going to take that bet every single time.
Youth, check. Talent, check. Volume, check. Quarterback, not check, but you guys could imagine. And again, though, I've talked about it. Quarterback and running back are far more important to be a part of elite scoring offenses. Wide receiver and tight end. Fantasy, at least, we have seen those players still manage to put up big numbers, even without the benefit of a great offense. Shuck it. Olave down there somewhere, Jake. And I don't think we're done talking about these Saints wide receivers. More on that here in just a little bit. But first, closing things out with round 8. I'll admit, I took this guy in my home league last Friday. It didn't even feel that good, but I'm still listing him because I think it makes sense. Jake, Commanders running back Brian Robinson, again, going after pick 85 right now. And I just think this is a sort of archetype that if you just remove the name, remove the thought that this guy is boring, he fits exactly what we're looking for. Okay, we want a running back who is going to be the lead goal line option on a high scoring offense. You look at all the running backs in high scoring offenses and look how early they're going in drafts. Okay, projected top 10 scoring offense this year. Bills, James Cook, top 15. Ravens have Derrick Henry. Obviously, the Eagles have Saquon. CMC for the Niners. Bucky Irving for Tampa. Chase Brown for the Bengals. Kyron Williams for the Rams. Every single one is top 15. The 2 exceptions are 2 guys who we have been pounding the table for to some extent on the Fantasy Life show. Brian Robinson currently going as the RB29, and also Isaiah Pacheco over there for the Chiefs. So again, it's a situation where last year we saw Brian Robinson in the same offense with Cliff Kingsbury calling plays, have a 257 pace and 257 carry and target pace throughout the year if he could have played 17 games. It doesn't take an incredible running back to have a spike season in touchdowns, Jake. We saw Raheem Mostert have 18 in 2023. Gus Edwards had 13 in 2023. Jamal Williams had 17 in 2022. Also got some Patriot running backs like Damon Harris and LeGarrette Blount who had spike seasons if you're old enough to remember that. So again, it might not be sexy, but that said, I feel like Brian Robinson's, boringness, if you will, held against him more than most. Brian Robinson has a longer career rush than Bijan Robinson. The mainstream media doesn't want you to know about that. So Brian Robinson, round 8, Jake, really one of the better 0 RB picks out there.
He is. And you said it. He's not sexy, but not every pick at this point on needs to be that. Not everybody has to be this league winning dynamo. Not saying that he couldn't certainly help you win your league, but you're not going to be looking at this guy likely as a Saquon Barkley from last year. That's okay. But as you mentioned, week to week, if this guy gets you a touchdown, you're going to be sitting pretty, especially if he is your RB2 on your lineup, which he will be for a lot of folks. But he doesn't even need the touchdowns, I don't think, to pay off. He just needs to, frankly, not repeat his offseason from a couple of years ago where he got shot. And then I think people forgot that. He still did great after that season, by the way. So all luck for Brian Robinson this year.
I don't think many men are going to be drafting Brian Robinson, but maybe you could be one of the few that does and reap the rewards of those touchdowns. There's low-key some big upside here, too. Both Brian Robinson and Austin Eckler had games when the other was injured in which they actually had a snap rate north of 70%. That is legit workhorse level usage inside an offense that, again, all of us expect to be really good. So maybe the, training camp Hall of Famer, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, Jake, ends up carving out a role here. Still has quite a way to go for the young 7th rounder. Feel free to root for the guy and everything. But again, don't get it twisted. Brian Robinson still firmly the RB1 in Washington. Guys, we got rounds 9 through 12 coming up next. First, though, a quick word to our friends over at Mike's Hard Lemonade. Wait, how many leagues are you in this year? 5? 6? More? Look, if you're deep in the fantasy trenches like us, you already know that to win it all, you've got to go hard. And accordingly, guys, Fantasy HQ, powered by Mike's Hard Lemonade, is the ultimate tool for fantasy football sickos. From managing all your fantasy leagues in one place to receiving personalized expert advice, dominate your fantasy season by using Fantasy HQ and by enjoying a Mike's Hard Lemonade while sweating your matchups on Sundays. Check out Fantasy HQ at fantasylife.com and find Mike's nearest you at mikeshard.com. Nobody makes lemonade like Mike's. Mike's is hard, so is prison. Don't drink and drive. Remember, premium malt beverage with flavors, all registered trademarks used under license by Mike's Hard Lemonade Company in Chicago, Illinois. We are building the perfect draft here on the Fantasy Life Show. Time for round 9. Jake started us off, and lo and behold, we got another wide receiver.
I promise one of these times it will not be a wide receiver, but I can't look at this round and see Ricky Pearsall sitting there and just walk on by. I know that you and I are both fans of the 49ers offense in general. We talked about George Kittle before. I know you had John Daigle on talking about Juwan Jennings as well. And I'm not anti-Juwan Jennings so much as I'm just very, very pro Ricky Pearsall. It's equal parts optimism in the talent. It's also acknowledging that they spent a first-round pick on him last year before he got shot in the offseason and kind of threw his whole deal into a tailspin. But I also do trust that he will build on what was nearly as impressive as that Juwan Jennings spike week, that famous spike week. Week 17, Ricky Pearsall did a pretty good imitation. He posted 8 catches for 141 yards and a touchdown. Now, I know it's the end of the season and fantasy playoffs were more likely done than not in a lot of leagues, but you can't just not look at that either. And then we, again, reference how thin they are with healthy players right now. Yeah. And then we also look at the fact that I think they drafted him to replace Deebo Samuel, or at least be a succession plan for Deebo / Brandon Ayuk. And we're at least halfway there. Arguably more than halfway there to that being a necessity at this point. So I'm fully into Ricky.
Luckily, Ricky is healthy now, had that hamstring injury that kept him out from the beginning of training camp, but he is back out there on the field. Right now, Juwan Jennings dealing with a calf issue that I'm pretty sure actually is a calf issue. I know there's been some speculation, one of those contract-related injuries, if you will, but Juwan Jennings is such a dog, man. I have a hard time believing this dude wouldn't be taking himself out of practice under really any circumstances. But yeah, saw the flashes, $141, a touchdown against the Lions, 69 nice yards and a touchdown against the Cardinals as well. Again, I wish we could have seen a little bit more. He didn't force a broken tackle all season long or anything. But again, he was coming back from getting shot. I think really believing in Ricky Pearsall, even if you're not completely sold on the talent, the 49ers were enough to use a first-round pick on him. And Jake, don't look now. As things stand, Brock Purdy, QB1 in NFL history in yards per attempt and passer rating. Certainly, that's a lot to do with the weapons, a lot to do with Kyle Shanahan. But guess what? That means the 2025 49ers likely going to continue being one of the more efficient passing games out there. We already got George Kittle. Now we're getting Ricky Pearsall. Seems like the sort of unit we should be looking to invest in. And accordingly, Ricky Pearsall, Jake's favorite round 9 pick. Round 10, I'm going back to another running back. This could be Vikings RB2. Maybe RB1, 1A, 1B. We got Jordan Mason come on down, really just a steady drumbeat throughout the offseason, one report after another, indicating that things are going to be cut fairly evenly down the middle between him and Aaron Jones. Now, it does seem like Mason's going to have the first crack at the ever-important fantasy-friendly goal line role. And man, in this offense, very improved offensive line. We actually have ETR Brandon Thorne calling it, I believe, the 5th-ranked offensive line in the league. PFF also pretty high on the group. So again, improved offensive line at the front. We've seen KOC get so much out of so much less quarterbacks than J.J. McCarthy over these past 2 years. And oh yeah, Jordan Mason's really freaking good in his own right. Actually was the RB3 in rushing yards over expected per carry last season, behind only Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry. Jake, again, we've actually seen Jordan Mason go far higher in some formats, but pick 142 on ESPN. I'm not even moving him down there. I'm paying more attention to Sleeper and Yahoo to have him just outside the top 100. But right now, we can get Jordan Mason and his potential standalone, if not takeover value, at the same price as some of these handcuffs, man. One of my favorite picks in this entire exercise.
Yeah, I just was on a best ball podcast, and I got my first taste of Jordan Mason in best ball. And I got to admit, It felt pretty good. I'm a big fan of Aaron Jones. Don't get me wrong. Love the dude. I think he's still a very competent backfield pass catcher, if nothing else. So it's not like I'm expecting Jordan Mason to come over and take all that right away. But Aaron Jones is getting up there in age. At worst, he's a magnificent handcuff, Jordan Mason. But I think he's going to be splitting time right away, too, because they don't want to run Aaron Jones into the ground. They kind of tried to do that last year. It didn't work out how they were hoping that it would. So I think we see him more in a reserved role. And Jordan Mason should hopefully see a lot of the short yardage and goal line stuff.
Another running back in this range I did like was Ramondre Stevenson. Similar potential standalone value with that handcuff upside. God forbid something happened to Travion Henderson, also Justin Fields, and all that dual threat goodness. Someone that I would be looking at there in round 10. Moving on to round 11, Jake, you are not going with a wide receiver, but rather a tight end. And I do think it's a good example where, yes, we would like to get a George Kittle or a Brock Bowers, Trey McBride of the world early if things fall our way. If not, though, take a page out of Ricky Bobby's playbook, first or last, because we have guys like this dude sitting for us well outside the top 100 picks.
Yeah, it's really easy to look at tight ends and kind of just do the what did you do for me last year? And then let's copy and paste that production from last year onto this year. And I feel like we're doing a disservice to Dalton Kincaid if we look at his disappointing sophomore season and just call it a day. Say, I'm done with this guy. He did not perform where I drafted him last year. That's okay. When I see the Bills GM Brandon Beane come out and say basically last season's issues, it was more of an injury thing and nothing more than that. Now, I hope that the knee injuries do not linger for Dalton Kincaid. And if he is healthy, Josh Allen still doesn't have a de facto number one pass catcher. All due respect to Khalil Shakir, he's the closest thing certainly that is on that roster right now. But at the very least, they need a 1B. Dalton Kincaid could be that guy. He showed flashes his rookie season, not knock your socks off good like Brock Bowers in his rookie season. But I think we've also just gotten a little too comfortable expecting tight ends to perform right out of the gate. That wasn't always a thing, Ian. We used to have to wait until a good year 3 breakout. And hopefully that's on the horizon here for Dalton.
And again, this time last year, we're talking about a legit top 5, top 6 tight end in a lot of fantasy football drafts. Now he's going outside the top 12, closer to tight end 15. I think it's pretty likely the truth probably lies somewhere in between. So we have some stats we can hang our hat on. Jake mentioned already the knee injury, also had a shoulder issue. Despite that, he was second among all tight ends in targets per route run last year, 8th in yards per route run, also top 9 in terms of PFF receiving grade. Again, a lot of good things. Just wasn't quite on the right page with Josh Allen. I know some of that was on Kincaid. I think he had 6 drops throughout the season. Obviously, a really rough one when it mattered most there against the Chiefs. But man, Jake also had a near 35% uncatchable target rate. That was the second highest mark of any tight end. So I know sometimes when we talk about any kind of Chief or Bill player having a bad uncatchable target rate, it's like, what are you talking about? It's Josh Allen, it's Patrick Mahomes. How are you going to say the quarterback was the problem? And no, I do not think Josh Allen is in any way the problem to any sort of issue, the Bills are looking at. But I think what you said, man, he's a tight end. Maybe it takes an extra year to figure things out. He's still just 25 years old. Wouldn't be completely out on, again, a first-round talent in a fantastic offense who has at least flashed here a little bit. Dalton Kincaid, a pretty good late-round dart to throw at the tight end position if you're into that kind of thing. Round 12, Jake, let's get back to the Saints here and Cooter Doodle's favorite, Rashid Shaheed. That's right. The Fantasy Life Show is all in on the artist known as Sheed. So really it comes down to very similar, I think, love for Shaheed as we have with Olave. We have a young player still that has shown all kinds of talent. I mean, literally since 2022, Shaheed is number 1 in the entire NFL in yards per target, guys. The only wide receivers, minimum 150 targets. All right. We're not even doing the minimum 40 target BS thing here. Only wide receivers to average north of 10 yards per target since 2022. Rashid Shaheed, Brandon Ayuk, Jalen Waddle, Nico Collins, Justin Jefferson, and A.J. Brown. I would say that's pretty freaking good company, okay? And yes, we do have the Tyler Shuck problem, or is it going to be Spencer Rattler, or God forbid, even Jake Haener? But again, at this price point, at this cost, we were talking about a guy going outside the top 130 picks on CBS, Yahoo, Sleeper, and ESPN alike. I will admit, Jake, I like to have my wide receivers before this point in more fantasy drafts than not. This is the range where usually I'm loading up more on handcuffs. But if you are going to take a wide receiver this late, it better be one that has shown talent and that has legit triple-digit target upside. Two things I think Shaheed has in spades.
Yeah, I mean, your best case scenario is like you just got a Devontae Smith or you just got a Jamison Williams all the way down in round 12. And hopefully we see signs right away with Tyler Shuck that says, like, oh, great, he's willing to throw it deep. Even if he doesn't connect with them right away, I want to see Shaheed getting, 4 or 5 targets in those first couple of games at a minimum. So I feel comfortable going, all right, he's going to try it. He's going to try to throw to this guy, and they can develop the connection as the season goes on. But like you said, yeah, hopefully you have your wide receivers earlier than this, and you don't need to start him in week 1. So you can kind of see what happens. And then, worst case scenario, all right, you move on from him, you pick somebody else up, and you call it a day.
Not going to sit here and say, oh my God, watch these training camp highlights. Okay, they're fun. We should enjoy football being played. But the thing for Shaheed, I'm just happy to see the guy healthy, moving along. He's not sitting on the sideline, does seem to be fully back from that season-ending meniscus injury last year. So yeah, only got to play 6 games last year. That absolutely sucked. But in those 6 games, Jake, we had 4 top 18 PPR finishes. That was the same as Marvin Harrison Jr., Tyreek Hill, and Garrett Wilson had the entire season and far more games than that. So Rashid Shaheed, maybe not a boomer bust wide receiver, Jake. Maybe just a boomer boom maestro out there. I am happy to take him late in pretty much fantasy football drafts of all shapes and sizes. So speaking of getting late in fantasy football drafts, guys, it's time for quarter 4 here on the Fantasy Life Show. Rounds 13 through 16. Let's get it. We talked about Joe Mixon earlier in the week here on the Fantasy Life Show and some of the issues going on with this foot problem that could potentially keep him out for some of the early portions of the season. Maybe he's fine and he's able to play through it, but either way, Jake, I think it seems obvious right now that some of the help the Texans brought in recently, they brought in for a good reason. They might be relied on here.
Yeah, we went from talking about boom with Shaheed. I don't know how much boom is left in the tank for Nick Chubb, but the opportunity is definitely still there for him. And in round 13, at least as of right now, and as more information comes out about Mixon, we might see Nick Chubb shoot up the board. And if that's the case, and he gets into the single digit rounds, I'll be less interested. But for right now, Chubb is I think a peak value. And Woody Marks, a guy who I really like, a rookie running back that the Texans traded a 3rd-round pick to get, I do think will make an impact this year. I don't think that we see Nick Chubb catch many passes because Nick Chubb historically has not caught many passes, but that hasn't stopped him from being a valid performer on your fantasy lineups. So even if he doesn't get the pass catching work, he should be getting all or most of those rushing touchdowns in an offense that you would expect to score quite a bit. I know that CJ Stroud certainly regressed last year, but it's not like the talent went away for this entire offense. They've added pieces everywhere that I think will make this one of the more high-powered offenses in the NFL. So I like Chubb. I'm not going out of my way, like I said, to draft him in round 6 or round 7 if it ends up that way by the end of the summer.
Guys, we're talking about someone going outside the top 160 picks on ESPN Sleeper who realistically could be looking at 15 plus touches in week 1. Okay. Just that alone, you don't have to worry about the offensive line. Don't have to worry about the running back in question. That alone to me is worth a pick going this late in drafts. So I know at this point it's like, oh, we have all these concerns. You have a concern with anyone available in round 13 or later. If it happens to be a starting running back for an actual NFL team, again, you could be doing a lot worse at this stage in drafts. So Nick Chubb, round 13. I'm with you, Jake. I'm not trying to chase him up anyway. At that point, I'd probably actually be leaning more towards a Woody Marks of the world. But again, hard just looking at the projection at hand not to be enthused about Nick Chubb. One of the mistakes I made last year, hand up, okay, was watching Kareem Hunt with the Chiefs go out there. And I remember saying it reminded me of like Shaq on the Celtics. Okay, he did not look anything like his former self. And guess what? He wasn't explosive all season. And it didn't matter because the Chiefs liked him enough to still hand him the ball. And no, he didn't give you the top 10 numbers, but he was still a waiver wire pickup that was virtually free, who you still had as a good RB3. So again, that's what I'm seeing here with Nick Chubb. Falls into the end zone a few times, gives you 60 yards here and there. Again, you could do a lot worse this late in the draft. So speaking of being able to do a lot worse, Jake, round 14, I cannot quit him. I will not quit him. Mike Gesicki, this is the year. Bengals tight end 1, number 88 in your programs, number 1 in your hearts. I just think that Mike Gesicki, man, maybe, and this is a hot take here, maybe he is actually who we want Kyle Pitts to be all along. We're talking about a pass catching friendly tight end and the most fantasy friendly offense in the entire NFL. We have a situation here where, God forbid, something happens to T. Higgins. By the way, he's injured his hamstring to some degree in every single year dating back to 2019. We can now have Joe Burrow's number 2 pass catcher going outside the top 150 picks. Okay. Only had 2 touchdowns last year on over 60 catches. Touchdown regression in the fold here. We have, unfortunately, Eric All out for the entire season. He just got a 3-year, $25 million+ contract. I don't think they would have gave him that. They did not plan on, again, feeding him the football, at least to a decent extent. So this late in the draft, Jake, again, you still need a tight end. Look, I'm not trying to leave drafts of Mike Gesicki as my clear-cut tight end 1, but let's say you did decide to go first or last, all right? You got Dalton Kincaid a few rounds earlier, Mike Gesicki, exactly the sort of lottery ticket in a range with a bunch of scratch-offs.
I'm taking every piece of this Bengals offense that I can get. So, of course, I'll throw the dice down and see if Mike Gesicki hits. The beautiful part about drafting him at this spot, as you alluded to, is like, if he doesn't hit for you or you get impatient because the first couple of games don't pay off for you, fine, drop him and stream the position. I don't care, but I'm not going to miss out on a piece of this potentially incredibly dynamic offense just because, Mike Gesicki, what's he done since he was with the Dolphins, whenever that was? Like, come on, guys, just get over these burns that we get by tight ends in the past. Let it go. Assess the situation anew every single year so you don't miss out.
I truly think that if like Mason Taylor or someone, again, maybe Mason Taylor's awesome, but if the Bengals had just drafted a tight end that was walking into the role that Gesicki has, we would be freaking out right now at the potential to get this dude this late in draft. So Mike Gesicki, feeling good about that. Also feeling good about your round 15 choice, Jake. Again, beggars cannot be choosers this late in the draft. So if we have a wide receiver with a legit triple-digit target projection going in round 15, maybe we should be paying attention.
It's the opposite of the Bengals offense, I'll tell you that. But the Browns have to have somebody there catching a lot of these targets. I do think Cedric Tillman showed enough last year. We have to say this, very small sample size. I get it. But there was a period, week 7 through 11 of last year, when Tillman was healthy and playing with anybody besides Deshaun Watson, that he actually bested Jerry Jeudy in target share, air yards, end zone targets, and targets per route run. So he showed for that very small time period, all the circumstances had to be right, but you can't fault a guy for having good circumstances, and he delivered on that. So the depth chart is thin outside of him and Jerry Jeudy. Elijah Moore is gone. Deontay Johnson is on his, 6th team in 3 years? So give me all that Tillman.
Projected for 102 targets. You can check out all of our Fantasy Life projections and rankings over at fantasylife.com. Again, code Ian for 20% off. Gotta love that. Let's close things out, Jake, with potentially Colts QB1. Seems like the training camp hype is going well. Anthony Richardson, I am ready to get hurt again, but at least this time I'm going to get hurt with a round 16 pick and not anything close to the top 10. So with Richardson, certainly hasn't come out storming out of the gates like we were hoping for after he got picked 4th overall a few short years ago. But we've seen the flashes. I mean, 4 top 10 finishes in just 12 full career starts. It's a situation where he just does the one thing we ask our quarterbacks to do in fantasy, better than almost anyone else, run the football. In fact, over these past 2 years, only Jalen Hurts has actually averaged more fantasy points per game from rushing than Anthony Richardson. The man's been more productive than Josh freaking Allen on the ground. Do not ask me about the fantasy points from passing production. I can tell you right now, they have not been good. But man, you look at this offense, Josh Downs, Michael Pittman, obviously Tyler Warren got drafted for a reason. Even Alec Pierce is underrated in my humble opinion. Shane Steichen has largely gotten a lot out of his quarterbacks over the years. If Richardson can just be bad throwing the football and not maybe the single worst quarterback we've ever seen throwing the football, Jake, we could have a steal here in round 16.
I love it. You look at the guys that are going around him, and it's just a lot of like, okay, they're not going to be bad. Well, I don't want to be stuck with a quarterback that's just not bad on my rosters. I want the upside shot, and we'll know what we have in the first couple of weeks with Richardson. Hopefully it's amazing. If not, again, you can always stream the position from there on out.
I don't need Stafford. I don't need Rodgers. They're a million times better in real life. Not fantasy football, though. Anthony Richardson, round 16, you can cut him if it doesn't work out. So, guys, again, we enjoyed building the perfect draft. Let us know in the comments what draft picks you like, what you would change, maybe where we just flat out messed up. Again, appreciate you guys as always. So, for Jake, for producer Matt, for producer Kelsey, I'm Ian. Thanks again for tuning into the Fantasy Life Show. And until next time, take care, everybody.